Michelle, to the Raw podcast today.
Thank you, Sabina.
Thank you for reaching out. I know that you have an incredible story and you had asked to come on because I feel that your story can help others. So
sure.
Let's get right into it. I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody. What does authenticity mean to you?
I don't think I've ever been anything but authentic. I think it's just, I have never had the effort or strength to try to be somebody I'm not. So authenticity is just being yourself and accepting yourself as you are, and making allowances for others to be who they are as well.
Love it. Are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Coffee.
Coffee. Red wine, white wine? Are you a wine?
Red wine.
Red wine. Okay. Favorite season?
Spring.
Spring. Do you have a book that you're reading right now? Favorite book?
Not right now. I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit after my son passed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to just get in and let you kind of share your story. But before we go to your actual story, I'm going to ask you if you had to pick one, because we have so many raw moments in our lives,
Yep.
that one raw moment that was life-changing.
My son passing away, most certainly. That shakes you at your core, and it's like an earthquake in your soul. Because you birthed them. So you are never meant to bury them. And yeah, that shook me 100% to my core.
So can you kind of take us through that story, so to speak? How old your son? Just tell me your story.
Yeah, my son Alex lived alone. He was a janitor in Richmond Hill in a public school system. And I do not know for certain because he lived alone, but I believe that he got COVID at school. He was vaccinated. And because he didn't tell anybody that he was sick, except the school board knew that he was sick because he wasn't coming to work, he ended up dehydrating and passing away. But his lungs were full. He ended up with a heart issue. I worked in long-term care, and I saw a lot of COVID, and it very often affects taste and smell. And if nobody's there to tell you to drink, and nobody's there to force you to eat, and you're in trouble.
How old was he?
29 years old. 29 years old.
And do you have other children?
I have a daughter. Yeah, she lives in Ottawa.
So how has this experience changed you? Like, I know I agree with you, being a mom, you never want to go through having to bury your child.
Never,
like, it's not something that, it just isn't right? So what's changed in your life? Like, do you feel, obviously, there's an emptiness, I'm sure, but...
Yeah, but I saw a psychic about 4 months after my son passed. And I am certain I was connected with my son in that moment. And that has brought me an incredible level of comfort and a real understanding that he is always watching me and he's always with me. And I live my life to make him proud. So that pushes me forward all the time. And it has made me a better PSW. It has given me a profound understanding of grief that I can now turn to the community and provide death doula services, because it's not going to shake me. Like, I have dealt with the worst.
Right.
So I know that I can manage other people's grief, whether it's a mother or a father, a sibling, a husband, a wife, all of those. And empathize with a mother who is in the same boat as me.
Now, for the people that might be watching or listening, can you explain what a death doula is? Because not everybody knows.
So today someone asked me that. And so what I said was that essentially I will come into their life when a diagnosis occurs, and I can help the family and the person that's ill with making decisions about what a good end of life would look like for this person, and work with that family to help them all kind of deal with the emotions and the tough feelings that come with accepting that somebody is life is ending. So that's part of it. And then being there as that person gets more ill, to be there overnight and support that person, because I'm a PSW, I can take care of that person for most of what they need at night and during the day and whatever else. So I bring additional services with that, then help with dealing with the body when they do pass, dealing with early grief, helping the family get things organized and just being there for them. But all the way through that, I have a nurse that I will pull in for anything that requires nursing care. I know amazing grief counselors that I will refer out to when it's beyond what I can help with. So it's an understanding of where I kind of fit in all of that. And I've done some extra palliative education to give me just that little bit extra. So I can also help the family with understanding what's happening, like where things are going to start changing and what are the signs that things are towards the end. So that's another piece of it.
Do you, and I know, like, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but helping families go through this process of losing their child, is that not just opening the wound for you every time, like ripping the band, like every time, or?
Yeah, so it's more of my story that kind of explains why I'll be able to do that. So I'll say, yes, I can do that. And that's because of my background, really.
Right.
So, yeah, I did, yeah, I don't know if I should move on to that next part.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Go for it.
All right. So my mother had schizophrenia with bipolar. So I dealt with highs and lows, anger, rages, paranoia, all of the delusions that my mother had. So as a child in that environment, there's no consistency.
Right.
And you can't count on whether she's going to be a happy person or a rage. Like there was no way to read that. So I had to learn very early how to take care of myself, and
Wow.
and then make and protect my little sister. So those were life-changing moments for me as a child.
Right. How early do your memories go back? Like what age do you?
I have memories from when I was like 4. I have a Swiss cheese memory is how I like to describe it, because there were a lot of traumas, an awful lot of traumas in that. So yeah, I have a lot of memories, but I did an extensive therapy in 2016. I did EMDR therapy, which essentially allowed me to rescue the little girl that was in all of those stories, because that little girl thought it was her fault, and it was never her fault.
Right.
So that work I did in 2016, and the kind of upbringing I had with that mother, and I had an alcoholic father, so we just got to combine the two. It was bad. So
Isn't it amazing? Because, we all have a past and we all have a
Absolutely.
story. The fact that you can be sitting here and sharing it and probably helping someone listening or watching from home is such a gift, because if you didn't go through that therapy and
Yep.
you didn't, like, you
Yep.
could be in victim role
for your whole life,
right?
Absolutely.
So,
It had a lot of impact in my early adulthood, and I didn't realize the impacts I was having. But I met my ex-husband when I was 19 years old, and I married him, and because he rescued me, and that's what I needed at that moment in my life. But then I thrived in customer service in the technology market,
Right.
and I became a PSW in 2017. It was not, I always took care of people. That's what I
Right.
did. I took care of my family. I took care of my kids. And my grandmother got dementia. And she got financially abused in a long-term care facility. She thought she got paranoid. and she thought that the family was stealing from her. So she basically banned the family from visiting her. And in that time, a minister and his daughter befriended her, and they got her to sign over her power of attorney to them. And then by the time we were allowed back in her life, and she was at a later stage, it was too late to do anything about that. But that created a passion in me to turn around and protect vulnerable seniors and disabled people and all of that. I knew this was my passion job. This is what I meant to do.
Right.
And now it just has an extra layer because of the experience that I've now had dealing with grief.
Well, you can bring so much more to the table for
Absolutely.
people, right? Because you can only guide or take someone as far as you've gone in your own journey
Yeah.
while you're still staying authentic, right? There's
Absolutely.
people that fake their way through it,
Yep.
but if you want to stay true to you, like even a therapist, like my therapist said, I can only take you as far as I've ever gone, right?
Absolutely.
And then you need to move on
Yep.
into the next person. So,
Yep.
how have your relationships been? Like whether they're like with friends,
Yeah, so
Partners.
certainly before 2016, I had, and I still have complex PTSD and depression and anxiety. They are far less of an impact on my life ever since 2016, but had a huge impact prior to that. So startle reflex, very much that, and never knowing what to expect. So very protective of myself and close myself off when I need to, and those sorts of things certainly. And my mother was still in my life for a number of years in my first marriage. So that created a ton of stress as her demands for seeing her grandchildren and then not wanting to see her grandchildren and just the roller coaster that my mother was. So is still, but I haven't had her in my life in 25 years, pretty much. Yeah, I had to make that decision to
is she
protect my
still
own health. She's
around?
still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
is your father still?
My father passed away last year with dementia. My stepfather is actually my rock in my life. He married my mother when I was about 10 years old. I was shocked he married her, but he did. And he has been the consistent person in my life from that point in my life. So he's a rock for me.
Right.
Yeah, he's suffering with Parkinson's now, so it's kind of sad to see that happening. But yeah, he is my only real parent as far as I'm concerned.
And you have a younger sister?
I have a younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's dealt with an awful lot of physical issues. So a lot of different conditions that have impacted her life as an adult. So it's been sad to kind of see that and how she has to deal with that. I've always felt that I've kind of been healthier because I've always spoken
Right.
about my traumas. I've always dealt with my traumas. I don't let them just fester.
Right.
So I think that that's just allowed me to be a little bit healthier. So.
I'm going to bring it back because I think I cut you off and we didn't get the answer of your relationships. How are,
Yeah.
like, do you struggle with?
I have on and off throughout my life. So trusting friends, my mother would actually call friends and tell them lies about me to turn them against me. Again, schizophrenia. And so it became a situation where I didn't necessarily trust my friends. I didn't know how much they were impacted by what my mother said. So that was tough as a teen. But now I have an awful lot of those friends from my public school years and my high school years that are some of my very, very best friends now.
Great.
And I've made a lot of great connections in London as well. I've got a couple of amazing mentors that have really made a difference for me. I met the love of my life
Did
in
you?
2019.
Okay, tell me about it.
So I actually met him on Plenty of Fish.
Did you?
Um,
Okay.
And So he took me to dinner at a nice restaurant downtown London. And he actually had broken his ankle about 3 months before I met him. So he was hobbling in crutches to come and greet me at the restaurant. And we had a lovely dinner. And then we went and sat in a park and chatted for like 4 hours. And the next day he sent me a video of every place we went on PowerPoint of just little
Right.
clips of our date. And
Sweet.
so he's an amazing man. I'm very proud to be with him. I gave him a choice when my son died. I said, okay, he's not your son, and this is going to change me. I don't know how it's going to change me, but I would absolutely understand if you decided at this point you can't, right? It's so much,
Right.
right? And I didn't want him to feel he had to stay, and he did. And he had to deal with a really sad me for 8 months. I had a really tough time for the first 8 months of this. It happened in March 2023. So it's still fairly recent. But I feel like I was given almost a gift, as weird as it sounds, by my parents and by the therapy that I did, that have actually allowed me to get through this with my son in a positive way. Like I go to grief groups, and there are moms that it's been 10 years and they still can't go out to work and still can't, and I understand why, like if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't have either, right? It's life altering, and it's a hole forever, right?
It is. It is. And I'm so sorry
Yeah,
for your
thank you.
loss.
Thank you.
And but I am so excited that you've met the love of your life.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've got a beautiful life starting, and which is amazing. Did
Yeah.
you know as soon as you met the love of your life? Like, did you know he was the one?
It took a little bit, right?
Right.
And then, the first 6 months we lived together, it's tough, it's all
Right.
the little things. And yeah, so there was touch and go for a while, and he's got some unresolved traumas that impact sometimes, but I understand that, right? So I know he's a good person
Right.
at the end of the day, and that he loves me with everything he has, and I love him completely. So I'll be with him for the rest of my life. I know that. I know that for 100%.
Do you have any anger towards your family and like your mom being sick? I know she couldn't help it because it's an illness, but when you were young, you didn't know any better.
When
so
I was
did
a
you,
teenager,
did you
I was very rebellious as
Were
a
you?
teenager, for sure. And that actually is something that I've been able to also turn around and say, when teenagers are acting up,
Right.
I will say to a parent, I acted up too, and I turned out okay.
Right.
Right? Like, don't give up on them. Like, you don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what might be happening at school or with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever that looks like.
Right.
And it's just give a little grace, right? Like, don't throw them out with the water. It's
Right.
not.
So what's the worst thing that you ever did as a teen? If you want to speak about it.
Well, really a lot of underage drinking was the
Right.
primary thing I did. And I tried a number of drugs, but I stayed away from cocaine somehow.
Right.
I always had like a sixth sense about
To
me
not.
to know when it would be too much. Right?
Right.
I still needed a little control. So, but yeah, I rebelled an awful lot. A lot of that rebellion occurred after a very rage-filled incident with my mother, where she actually chased me with a knife. And I locked myself in a bathroom, and she actually stabbed the door. And I left that night at 17 with the clothes on my back, and that was all. So I started my life at that point. And then I always felt like God, I was a little mad at him. It's like, couldn't you have done something a little sooner? But anyways, I was working at a mall when I left the house. and I had like 3 jobs in that mall. I was working at the lottery booth. And out of nowhere, there was a bus stop out there, and a bus driver comes in, a lady bus driver, and she says, "I heard you need somewhere to live. I happen to need a live-in babysitter for my 3 boys."
Oh,
And so I went and did that for a year and a half. Then I met my ex-husband and, moved along with life. But yeah, there have been moments where God has clearly touched my life and brought good things to me.
it's beautiful. Okay, if you could bring everybody into a room that you've ever met, dead or alive, and you could only look for one person,
It's Alex,
yeah, your son,
for sure.
and what would you say to him?
Well, I just hugged the heck out of him.
Yeah.
I saw him in February 2023. So, and he was in the best mood we had seen him in ages. And he was just really light and happy. And I wish I had hugged him longer. I wish I could have said, that I'm so proud of him. And, it's all those, I wish I could have.
Right.
So, yeah. And I'm proud. I'm so proud of him. He went to York University, so he lived with my ex-in-laws in that time. They had health issues. My mother-in-law had dementia, and my father-in-law had other health issues. He went to school and lived there and took care of them for 5 years.
Wow.
And then they passed in 2020, and he had to go find his own place. But at that point, he's not going to meet anybody because it's COVID. So, his life kind of focused on work and,
Right.
Yeah, hockey. He's a huge Maple Leaf fan, so I
Oh,
watch a lot of Maple Leaf
Do
games
you?
now. Yes, yeah.
If you could go back and tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would you give her?
That I was a good kid, and I was a really good kid, and not to believe everything you hear, right?
And if you could talk to your mom now, I know she's still around, but what's something, if your mom, how do I frame this? If you could have a conversation with your mother where she would really be able to grasp what you're saying, what's something that you'd want to say to her?
Really, at this point, I feel like I have so much retrospect and grace for her that I would want her to know that I love her, and that I understand that your brain plays a lot of tricks on you, and that you don't necessarily know reality all the time because you can't. There's voices, there's all kinds of things that happen with schizophrenia, and yeah, that I could put her in my life. She caused so much havoc in my life that I still don't think I could, but I would want to have that conversation with her.
So you haven't been able to forgive her at this point.
It's not, I do forgive her, but I also have to protect myself.
Right.
So it's more about protecting my life and the life of the people I love, in not allowing her to slip into a manipulation or slip into a rage or, no, I can't. No,
Right.
and I deal with dementia in my business. I had taken care of a lot of people with dementia, and I have also dealt with people with schizophrenia. And I'm able to do that. I'm comfortable with them.
It's different,
It's
right?
different.
Yeah.
It's not my mom.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And what about your father? If you had an opportunity to say something to him.
I would have liked to, but his dementia was too far along. Yeah, he did some things that were very difficult to forgive. So I tried to forgive and tried to arrange communication, and his wife wouldn't allow it. So I left that alone. And that's fine. He had very little positive impact in my life.
Right.
And he wasn't really around that much in my life. So I don't feel an awful lot of regret on that. it's really more about that, my stepdad, and making sure that he is always supported and loved, and, you know, all of that. That's where I send it.
Nice. Do you have any regrets in your life thus far?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I've always kind of lived for taking chances. I read a book when I was looking at divorcing my first husband, called Take the Step, the Bridge Will Be There. Really good book. And it just fit at that
Take the
moment.
step, the
Take
bridge
the
will-
step, the bridge will be there. So I've kind of used that as okay, I'm going to take this step and we'll see. Right? And sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes it does.
Right.
So, you know, even sending you a message, right? It's
Yes.
just take the chance. You don't know what could happen.
And the timing of you sending that message was incredible, because we've got a waiting list of people, but someone had just canceled
Yeah.
because they weren't well, and you happened to be right there. And
Yeah.
that's just,
Yeah.
I feel like God, the universe always works out in mysterious ways.
It really
right?
does.
So,
It really does. Yeah.
So, a quality about yourself that you're really proud of.
I'm an amazing listener. I have a very dear girlfriend who shared that she is being physically abused.
Sorry to hear that.
And I was able to listen to her without jumping in and telling her she should do this or she should do that, because she basically told me everything that she was already planning and already working through. And she thanked me very much for not interrupting her and not, you know, just listening. I'm really good at that. And I make my clients love me. They fall in love with me. It's just a thing.
How
because,
can they not?
right?
You're
It's just
like this lovable soul,
yeah.
right?
So I had a funny incident with my I'll leave that alone because he might see this. So,
Oh.
but yeah, you know, I love winning people over. So the ones that are the most stubborn and
Yes.
the most set in their ways, I'm gonna get them.
Yep.
I know I'm gonna get them.
I love it. I love it.
Just, you know, I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And
Which just feels so good when you're just in alignment, right?
yeah.
You
I got the love of my life. I'm a grandmother.
Are you?
Yeah, my son-in-law and daughter-in-law had a baby girl, and she's 3 months old now. So
congratulations.
yeah,
That's
very
amazing.
excited about that.
Oh,
And,
that's gonna be fun.
yeah, so that's also helped to lessen a little bit the pain of the grief. So I do have an 18-year-old client that I work with who has, I do feel a little bit like it was fate for me to be assigned to him.
Right.
That he's kind of helping me with a little bit of my missing my son.
Right.
And I'm also a mentor to him. So it's kind of this really amazing relationship. And yeah, I just feel like those things fall into my lap, and it's meant to be. So it's just, yeah, it's good.
Good for you. There's good energy coming from you for sure. Like you're just a positive soul, considering, you know, all the
yep.
hardships that you've gone
Yeah.
through. If there was one quality that you could improve on about yourself, what would you want to, if any?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, when someone yells, I take it in deep. And it's, for my partner, it's difficult for him sometimes. And he's like, that's not what I meant at all. And you know, that's not what, and he's right. You know, so I'm always trying to work on that a little bit but I know that's a thing from my childhood, and it's just there, right? So I have to fight that and kind of get that a little bit better. Not so much with my clients. I've never had an issue with my clients yelling, and especially in dementia. It's just a thing. It's fine, right? But for him, it's a little different, and something I want to improve on for him.
That's great. You know what? That's kind of a wrap. Like that went fast. This one went fast. Like definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
for being
welcome.
open and honest
You're
and
very
vulnerable. And you know what? I just think that it's incredible that you can take something so horrific that's happened in your life and use it as a tool to help others.